Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and by the looks of some of today's attendees, good late evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Steve Rogers. I will be the moderator for today's webinar titled Perfecting Application Performance in Citrix Environments. Just a quick look at today's agenda. It'll include a very brief introduction about the AppEnsure solution, followed by a few slides and a demo from our main presenter, Sri Chaganty, who is AppEnsure's founder and CTO. Sri will just take a few minutes to go through some PowerPoint slides to discuss his unique perspective and approach when building the AppEnsure solution, and then jump into the demonstration as quickly as possible. Afterwards, we will have a Q&A, so I encourage all of you to enter any questions that you may have in the chat box. If anything is relevant and we can get to it during the presentation, we will definitely include that. Otherwise, we will collect them and go through as many questions towards the end of the webinar as possible. Another quick note, today's webinar will be recorded, so we will be able to share the recording with you afterwards, and we'll get it into your inboxes as soon as possible. Let's go on to my first slide. It is a graphic here that was put together by Gartner, and it's a new category that they defined that focuses on the IT operations group and their role in application performance. The category Application Aware Infrastructure Performance Management, or AAIPM, is a complement to the traditional APM category that is geared towards DevOps and code instrumentation. So AppEnsure's AAIPM solution focuses on the response time and throughput of every application, both custom developed and purchased, and how the interactions between the application and its underlying infrastructure are affecting application performance. So with that little commercial for AppEnsure, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sri Chaganty, and thank you once again for joining us today. Sri?
Thank you, Steve. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for taking time to understand about AppEnsure solution. I'm Sri Chaganty, CTO and founder of AppEnsure. Unlike other webinars you might have attended, this webinar is going to be different in style and content. I'm not here to teach or preach what you already know. This webinar will not be about slideware. It will be about showing you our product and initiate you to thinking about perfecting the performance of your Citrix environment in a totally new approach. If you are attending this webinar, then you've already decided that you want to perfect your Citrix delivery process. It could be because you're not getting what you're expecting out of the solutions or tools that you have already implemented. It could be because you have decided that you can improve upon what you're experiencing today. In either case, your attendance is much appreciated. Let us focus on perfecting the performance of your Citrix environments. Perfecting performance is not just about finding problems or issues and resolving them. That is what you're being forced to do daily today. Of course, AppEnsure will empower you to do that in a more effective way. However, perfecting performance should free you from the vicious cycle of firefighting on a daily basis. The freedom from war room meetings and brainstorming sessions will happen when you use the operational intelligence you gain monitoring your application's behavior over a period of time so that you can define and develop good behavior patterns for your applications. Many solutions and vendors out there emphasize more on what went wrong and how to fix it, or the emphasis is always on how to find the bug. But in the process, equal emphasis should be paid on why, so that we can avoid such issues in future. That can happen only when you develop contextual intelligence of events which are driven by demand and load. AppEnsure provides you with that correlated intelligence to face your daily challenges as well as your scalability demands. Finally, how to perfect the performance is important, and you can do it when you have the capability to harvest the data from your Citrix environment's behavior patterns, when you gain a deep understanding of who uses what application, when and how, as well as how does the application perform under various contexts. Before I start demonstrating our solutions, I want to invite you to step out of your usual perception of performance management and start looking at it from a different angle, just like what we did when we conceptualized and developed the solution in light of shortcomings of current tools. I want to share with you the vision and perspective that drove me in developing the AppEnsure product with help of a very talented and dedicated associates who took the word impossible out of their vocabulary. I humbly request you, just like we did, to think about application-centric, not just server-centric. Think about user behavior in the context of user experience. Think about not only resolving your immediate problems, but about operational intelligence of your applications. Think about intelligent data set, not just rich data set. Think about strategic improvement to your business critical applications and not just day-to-day files you have to put out. So far, you're exposed to solutions that gather commodity data, be it Citrix provided, Microsoft WMI, SNMP, NetFlow, or whatever commodity data sources that are present. Interpreting that commodity data provides commodity results. And many of the sources of such commodity data, like WMI, are very resource intensive. They're highly taxing on your servers. AppEnsure's solution is not solely dependent on the set of commodity data. AppEnsure independently collects unique data that provides intelligence that is otherwise missing today. Based on the experience of having been consulting with many clients to improve their application performance for 15 years before starting AppEnsure, one fundamental perspective and differentiator we built into our solution is how we look at the performance of an application. Application performance is never reflected in the metrics you collect that show how resources are being utilized. Your CPU utilizations, memory utilizations are meaningless for application performance unless they are correlated intelligently with other metrics. Without that correlation, the resource utilization metrics are useless in perfecting the performance of your workloads. Perfecting your application performance is not just about fixing problems or predicting about problems alone. You can use many APM tools to code instrument, that is when you can and when you have the access to the source code, which is of course not possible if it is packaged or off-the-shelf applications. Code instrumentation will enable you to perfect your code, but will not help you in understanding the interactions that the application has within the infrastructure and the contextual variations in the infrastructure that will affect your application's performance. Perfecting your application workload requires a thorough understanding of everything that the application is dependent upon. Its interactions on the services it is dependent upon at the atomic level of each component that the application is made of, presentation tier, app tier, DB tier, irrespective of those services being internal to the server or external to the server where the component is running. Many solutions today misrepresent visibility. Visibility is not throwing a lot of data at you. Visibility is not making you interpret manually mountains of data. Visibility is about making your life easy by allowing you to drill down to details in a meaningful way. The most meaningful metric for any application is the response time that end user is experiencing when exercising the application. Finally, I want to go into the demo with a short story that reflects my perspective in building AppEnsure. After the first supersonic Concorde finished its maiden flight across the Pacific, the captain was greeting the passengers that were getting off the plane. An elderly woman getting off the plane said to him, "It was just like a normal plane ride." To which he responded, "That was the most difficult part of all, ma'am. Simplicity is tough. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." Before we go into the product demonstration, I want to reinforce what we promised that we will be demonstrating during this webinar. In the emails that were sent out to you, we emphasized that we will cover these topics for the Citrix environments. My objective in demoing our product is to show you some key features of the product so that you can decide for yourself if our solution meets some of the objectives that you have in attending this webinar. AppEnsure is rich in its set of features. Besides Citrix environments, we support all applications, custom, off-the-shelf, any delivery mechanism, thick client, thin client, web-based, Citrix delivered, VDI, whatever, any kind of architecture, three-tiered, multi-tiered, composition of custom and off-the-shelf applications, irrespective of the application workload location, hosted in your data centers, in the cloud, or in hybrid environment. It is impossible to show off all the features of AppEnsure's product in one single webinar. Therefore, I will focus on 3 use cases and demonstrate the product in light of those use cases. I will focus on perfecting performance through operational intelligence, true visibility of application performance in a VDI environment, and root cause diagnostics capability of the product. With that, let me get into the demo, and there will be a short blank screen while I launch the product. AppEnsure is an agent-based technology, and the agents are installed in the servers where the applications are being delivered. Today, as I mentioned to you, there are a lot of features in the product. We are going to focus on the Citrix delivered applications, or VDI. We call those applications that are delivered by Citrix XenApp or XenDesktop, or VDI server or desktop images as remote applications and remote desktops respectively. This is the main screen where you get all discovered applications which are auto-discovered. There is no configuration required when you install our agents and start our product. There is not even a requirement for you to restart the servers in order for the product to function. I have 8 standard applications which are packaged, 11 applications that are being delivered by Citrix XenApp, and 6 VDIs, both server and desktop images that are being published by Citrix XenDesktop. When I go into the remote applications, these remote applications are all discovered without any configuration, auto-discovered, and in the snapshot you will be able to see all the applications that have been discovered, and if you happen to have multiple instances of the same application like Microsoft Word or Excel, the multiple instances are shown in the tree structure on the left-hand side of the screen here. And in the summary screen here, based on how many servers, we have about 3 servers in this demo that I'm giving you, from where these applications are being published, what is the highest session latency, CPU utilization, memory utilization of the top 5 applications that are being published is given as a snapshot here. You can click on the list of details and actually go into looking at all the hosts, all the applications, the hosts that they're being published from, the kind of servers that are publishing that, the response times of those servers, alarms, CPU, and application memory usages. Now, one use case, the very first use case I said I'll be talking about, is the operational intelligence and how you can see what is happening with your applications. Let us take one of the published applications. Autonomy is the name of the application that is published, and The autonomy application, again, one of the things I wanted to mention here as I changed its time frame is you can look at all of this data that you're looking at the screen from a granularity of 5 minutes to 1 year or more than 1 year depending upon how long your subscription runs. So in the last 24 hours, I'm looking at this autonomy, and as you can see, the server response time for this application has been hovering between 2 to 3 milliseconds with a little spike here and there. The server performance index is basically telling me that everything is green, which means that all the calls that are coming into the server are basically addressed properly. There are about 3 different IP addresses from which this application has been accessed. So here is the real response time of that application to the users. Now let us look at how many users do we have. We have 3 users here, and of the 3 users, 1 user is using maximum CPU and memory resources on that particular server when accessing this application. So when I talk about application operational intelligence, look at on this particular server where this application is being published and other applications are also being published, the CPU utilization is hovering around 30 to 40%, whereas the percentage of the load that autonomy application is putting on this CPU is exceeding the CPU utilization. What does that mean? It means that there are a lot more processes of autonomy that are waiting to get a CPU attention, even when CPU is not taxed. Even when CPU cycles are available, there are more processes that are waiting to be serviced for this application. If you look at the baseline that has been formed here, which is self-learned baseline that is calculated based on the standard deviation every 15 minutes automatically. Of course, you can change that. Everything seems to be under control unless there are a couple of spikes here and there. But in general, this application for these 3 users is responding back within the SLA or within the baseline. However, there is only 1 user that is actually exercising it mostly. And even with 1 user, the load that the application is applying on the CPU is exceeding, which means that this application is going to have serious scalability problems if we were to continue to add more users that are going to come and use this application. There is no alarm here. There is no fixing here. Here is where you can see your application's behavior to understand as to how you can perfect your application so that the scalability demands when more users come in will be met as the and the response time from the application is going to be consistent. On the same server, as I said, besides this application, these are all the other applications that are being consumed. I mean, that are being published. So when you publish these applications, just one application is taking up this kind of CPU utilization. You can see the effect that the other applications will have. And also, if you drill down to see what else is happening with this application, with this server from where this application is being published, all other applications, you can see that on an average, the response time for all applications is pretty much within 3 to 4 seconds. Throughput in terms of number of calls, except for one little hike where I got about 60 calls per minute, is pretty normal. And my standard deviation in calls is average 65 calls, baseline is about 63, and I have the standard deviation and the 90-95% confidence levels with which I can say where it is going to fall. And these are all other applications that are also being published from this XenApp server. And as you can see, autonomy is the only one that's taking up a lot of resources. Rest of these applications are not exercising, probably because they are not being used by the end users. So to wrap it up, I basically want to, the first use case where even when things seem to be normal, the unique data that we're collecting and correlating from AppEnsure will allow you to drill down to see how you can perfect the performance of your application even when there are no fires to fight. Now let me go into some root cause. Let's pick up another application. Outlook is being published, and as Outlook is being published, let's look at what this server is basically doing. Well, response times are reasonable. Everything looks to be okay. As you can see here, unlike autonomy application, even when there are users, the load that this application is exercising or waiting for CPU cycles is below, so it is available, and these are all the users that are basically going in and looking and accessing the Outlook. And besides Outlook, there are other applications that these users are basically can access that are being published from this from the server where this Outlook is being published to the users. When you look at the topology of this is again, topology is auto-discovered, and the topology does not limit to the Citrix Silo. From where the Citrix is being accessed, the license, web interface, XML broker, to where the application is being delivered, to which the calls are going, all the way into the backend where the application's infrastructure, backend infrastructure, is actually delivering the application to the end users is auto-discovered when agented properly. Not only that, if in your environment this particular application happens to be communicating with the other servers, the server-specific topology, server-specific view of the application topology tells you that even if the application components are not active on other servers, because there are transactions that might be happening, there is a possibility that any of those servers can be affecting the performance, and AppEnsure constantly monitors the entire holistic view of everything, whether external or internal, that the application dependencies are, so that it can actively discover even before something goes wrong, so that you can go and fix the problem in the shortest amount of time. This green light here, this golden thing here is basically telling me, golden hop is telling me that in the entire topology in the last 24 hours, that is the least responsive in terms of the calls it got and the response time it gave back for the request that came from the XenApp server. So I know that many of you guys probably have heard this, where people are saying it's probably Citrix, because at the end of the day, the Citrix seems to be stuck on the end user's screen. But in this particular case, XenApp server, when going to the Exchange transport server, is actually experiencing problems in the infrastructure, and it has nothing to do with the Citrix Silo itself where the publication is happening. So the ability to see end-to-end, so that you actually can understand where to focus and where the bottlenecks are and where the fine-tuning is required, helps you to reduce the mean time it takes to identifying the problems that you have in delivering your applications in Citrix environments. Now let me go. I told you a second use case I would focus on is diagnostics and root cause. So let's go in and look at last 24 hours and see what kind of alarms did Outlook experience. As you can see, I've seen 4 different kind of alarms that have been generated. So when your response times are deviating or active discovery happens, it is real time. But when response times are deviating, we are not throwing alerts at you. There is diagnosis that happens. And those diagnostic steps, when executed, we try to get to the root cause to actually say, hey, not just you're having a bad day, this is the reason why you're having a bad day. Let's look at the first error there. We picked that error up because the response times are deviating, because the triggering was flow analysis. And it happened twice in the last 24 hours, and when I click on it, I get a detail that basically tells me that an RPC failure on the Microsoft Exchange server is affecting, and that is a unique user's IP address from where this particular access has failed, and as a result, the overall response time, average response time of all users is getting affected. When there is, since there is active discovery that is continuously happening, if any of the services are down, this happened twice in the last 24 hours, like the Citrix XML server breakdown, service has gone down, and therefore the breakdown in the communication between the Citrix XML data store and other XenApp servers is happening here. And if you look at the third one again as a discovery session, happened twice in the last 24 hours, it is basically saying that the XT server, Citrix X terminal server is basically gone down, and as a result, the user sessions are going to be closed. So a constant monitoring of the services that the application is dependent upon, and the response times as experienced by the users, and the diagnostics, layered diagnostics that are performed behind, so that you can actually identify and fix the problem, is what the root cause and alarm generation differentiators are with AppEnsure's solution. Let me go into my third use case that I wanted to focus on, which revolves around the VDI. So again, when it comes to either server images or desktop images, everything is self-discovered, and the images that are being published to the end users. In this case, I have a server image and I have a desktop image. When I look at a desktop image and click on it and go into the details of what is happening, I see the response time from the for that particular user of that image over the period of last 24 hours. The baseline, there are some peaks, but in general, everything is within 100 milliseconds. I can see again, as in the previous case, the CPU utilization, and as here is where more and more application load, this image is putting more and more processes are queuing up, as it probably because the user is exercising a lot of applications. And the memory utilizations, and what is the memory utilized and what is being utilized by the application. Who is using it? And one of the features that we provide is the agents I'm talking about. They're universal agents. You can put them on servers, they behave as server agents. You put them on the end devices, they act as end device agents. You can also bake an agent into the image that you're publishing remotely. And when you bake that, then we actually will be able to see the internals of what is happening with the image when the end user is using that image. So let's get there. This is what the third use case when I said drilling down in a meaningful fashion. Right now, I do not have any response time deviation. Things are looking good, but I would like to see what this user is basically doing with this image. And when I have an agent baked into the image, and I can look at the image response time, the unique data that we gather is basically ability to see how, irrespective of what other sources of metrics that would tell you what the latency is, this is the true image response time that the end user that is using this image is experiencing. Since this happens to be a desktop image, there is always going to be one user that is accessing it. Okay, what are the CPU utilizations? System CPU and ICHDX, process CPUs, memory utilizations, and I/O that is happening with this image. I can go into the session details, drill down into session details to find out who the user is, what is the published name, CPU utilizations, memory utilizations on this virtual machine that is actually streaming this image to the end user. session IO writes, session IO reads, and the ICHDX bandwidth. I can further drill down to see what applications is this end user exercising on this particular image. You might have published a bunch of applications. Which of those applications are actually being used by this user? And what are the other processes, system supporting processes that have been running on as a result, or that have been spawned as a result of end user using these applications. Of all the applications here is basically using 4 applications. And what is the memory, again, for applications and the support processes? What is the IO, again, for applications that the end user is using and for the support processes that have been spun off? What are the page faults, applications launched, and the support processes that are supporting those applications? Thread count for the applications that are being used and the support processes that are supporting those applications inside that image that you're publishing to the end user. And I can even further go down and figure out, of all the applications that the user is using, how much of the application time is being spent in a kernel mode or a user mode. Is the application waiting for the OS to give cycles, or is the application waiting for the user to input something? And what are all the support system processes that are supporting this application, and in what mode are they running? So the ability to have this operational intelligence driven by the response time is a key of the response time of that particular image that you're publishing. And when these response times are deviating, and when you have a problem with the images, and when people, even before somebody calls you and says, I have a frozen Citrix logo, or my Citrix doesn't work, you have the information at your fingertips to drill down in a meaningful fashion to understand what exactly is happening on that particular image and what experience that the end user is having in terms of using this image. So going back in a nutshell, I focused on, again, as I said, there are many features that AppEnsure provides, but I wanted to focus on 3 use cases. One is how you basically can see and perfect your application's performance that are being delivered using Citrix technologies by looking at the correlated intelligent data that we are providing. And I showed you how, when you have an end-to-end visibility that is auto-discovered for an application, you can very quickly identify which part of this delivery mechanism or the back-end infrastructure where the application issues are that you have to focus and resolve. And when the diagnostics happen with AppEnsure, how we basically show you the root cause that allows you to fix the problem in the shortest amount of time. And I've also taken a published desktop and drilled down. I drilled down the details to show you how, based on the response time of the images, you actually can go and find out the minute details to understand why a user might be having an experience that is not optimal. So, as I said, the objective of my demoing the product is to basically show you some of the features. I would have covered about 25% of the features that the AppEnsure product provides, and to illustrate how thinking differently, perfecting the performance in Citrix environments has been implemented as a product in AppEnsure's solution. So with that, I thank and turn it over to Steve for Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sri. You might want to leave the software up. We do have a few questions that are in. I encourage anybody that has more questions to enter them into the chat box, and I will try and review the ones that are in and get to the new ones coming in. Do you want to start with a hard one or an easy one, Sri?
Hard one, of course, all the time.
All right, I'll start with an easy one. Somebody saw the Citrix Startup Accelerator logo on the slides and just wondered what that meant to be part of that. If you could just talk to that, please.
Citrix is one of the largest corporate investors in our company, and we are actually housed in Citrix Accelerator, Startup Accelerator in Santa Clara, California.
Okay, told you that would be an easy one. Second, there's a couple questions about agents, and I'm just going to paraphrase and sort of combine them both here. So roughly, do you need to install agents on every single server and desktop to begin? And sort of a second part is, what's the impact on the infrastructure from the agents sending data?
I'll answer two different questions, so I'll start with the first one. No, you don't have to start with installing agents all over the place. You have to start with the presentation layer or delivery layer. The agents are architected to discover their neighbors. So agents will discover what is coming into me, what is going out of me as requests, and when it comes, who's actually handling it. So some of our customers have actually used our product to discover in real time what their application topology is, because when I discover that I'm going in the next hop to an IP address, all I can say is that I've gone to this particular application and I've seen that application. I'm trying to show you a topology map of one of the applications here so that you can understand. It will give me the IP address because I know all the calls that are going to that particular IP address and that I'm accessing that IP address, but I do not know what is happening. All I can say is that's where I'm going. Then you can go ahead and install an agent in there, and then it'll discover the other legs. So there is, to answer that question in a nutshell, there is no need to install everything to begin with. And having agents in the desktop is not necessary. It is not required. It gives you more visibility on the desktops, but everything I've shown you today is all on the server side. The second question, I told you I was in consulting and I've seen all products out there and seen how some of these agent technologies can blue screen your servers. We built our agents from day one to make sure that they do not put any more emphasis that leads an application to poorly perform. We have self-policing agents that are constantly looking at what they are using in terms of resources and will not cross a 5%, and if they have to, they'll throttle back, but never become the reason for your service to go to blue screen. In terms of the data that these agents are sending to the master, these are on an average in a 24-hour cycle. Of course, it all depends upon the number of applications and users, but an agent will not send more than 5 to 8 meg of day in a 24-hour period to a master.
Okay.
Steve?
Great. Thank you. I'm going to combine a couple more questions. Does this work with Citrix only? Does it work with VMware too? And do you integrate with Citrix Director?
The answers are, it works. Again, perfecting Citrix environments is a topic, so I focused on Citrix. As I said, whatever might be the delivery mechanism, we are agnostic to it. Whatever might be the code that your application is written in, we're agnostic to it. Whatever might be the virtualization layer that you're using beneath the virtual machine, we're agnostic to it. So it works for all deliveries, all delivery mechanisms, all applications, all the time, at all locations. What was the second question, Steve?
Citrix Director. Do you integrate with Citrix Director?
We have plugins. Yes, we do.
Great. Another one I'm just going to read word for word. Does AppEnsure measure end-user round-trip time?
Yes, it measures from two different angles depending upon how you instrument the environment. For every transaction from every user, we uniquely identify the request coming in. So if you have instrumented only the server side of the equation, then the minute the request comes in to the presentation tier to the minute it is delivered back to the end user from a server's point of view, we measure and round trip delays. Okay. If you were to put an agent on the end devices, then the minute the request goes out of the end device to the minute the request comes back from the server side, we measure those round trips. Comparing those two round trips, you basically can figure out whether the latency is in the network on the server side or something that is happening on the end device.
Okay, and a follow-up question from the same person is the agent needed on the endpoint as well as the terminal server?
No, it is not needed. When you, as I just mentioned, if you want to do a comparative analysis, agenting at the right place, that is the end device, is basically going to provide you that visibility. But without that, even without having agents on the end devices, we can basically look at every user coming into Citrix environment and we measure the response times for every user. And just to illustrate that, let's look at the users of this autonomy. As you can see, there are 3 users on this application. And for every user, Citrix is reporting session latency, which is about 8 milliseconds. But that is not what my overview is saying. My overview of the server response time is between 2 to 3 seconds. So this is just to show you that whatever might be the metrics that you're getting from the commodity will provide you commodity results. And this is what is happening with the particular user CPU utilization versus the application load. So I know what the CPU utilization is on the server. I know what the application load is on this server. I know what this user is exercising. As we have seen in the previous screen, of all these users, the core user is the one that is exercising this application the most. So as you can see here, you could see that most of the CPU is being consumed by this particular user. When I take away the total usage and only focus on what autonomy's load is, you can see what core is exercising on that load. Same thing with the memory, not only server, particular application, and the user. And for this particular user, how many sessions you basically can, if this particular user is roaming about in the last 24 hours, had multiple sessions and access the application from multiple users, all of those are going to be listed here with every session details in terms of the calls and in terms of the session and what other processes that this particular user using this application on this XenApp server has spun off and what are they consuming. So this correlated view basically tells you what each user is exercising, and that is what you get for every user without having to put an agent on the end device.
Okay, great. Thank you. A couple more questions to go. I'm going to compile a couple more here. How do you determine which alarms are critical versus high alert versus low alert, and how long does it take to determine what is normal? Again, I'm paraphrasing, combining a few questions there.
Sure. First, I'll start with the last part of the question. The tool basically comes with a baselining, self-built-in baselining, which basically builds the baseline based on hour of the day, day of the week, week of the month, month of the year. So it takes about 3 days for it to start getting and learning this baseline. So if you happen to have 100 or 1,000 users that come in and launch their Outlook at 9 o'clock every day morning, after the 3rd day, it basically understands that the baseline saying that, okay, at 8 o'clock, if so many people, or 9 o'clock, if so many people come, the average response time has been around this, and if it deviates beyond this is when I have to. So demand-based learning will kick in, and it takes about 3 days for the tool to learn it. How do we determine what is major, what is minor? anything that is going to affect the performance of the application, whether it be service, whether it be response time, whether it be something that is happening where one user dominating the application. For example, let's take the same example I'm talking about. When three users of the same application, one person is actually dominating and the other people are not using it, but if they were to put any load on this application, absolutely their response times are going to go to hell because they will not be able to get the cycles as this particular user is basically sucking up all the CPU cycles and memory to exercise his request to the application. So based on what is going to affect the response time, whether it is services, or the response times, or the utilizations, or the loads, the combination of multiple factors is how we determine whether it is a critical or as an error, or informational, or a warning.
Okay, great. One more, it's a very general question, and I believe this will be the last one for today as we're 45 minutes into it. Could you explain a little bit about the master, the database, and big data behind it?
Very good question. The master has been architected so that we basically can take multiple hundreds of thousands of agents input. The master supports master of masters architecture, and the big database data store that we're supporting is that comes with the product is MongoDB. And all the features of MongoDB in terms of sharding, horizontal sharding, replication, multiple data stores are all supported as part of the product. So you basically can expand and daisy chain your MongoDBs as you expand the number of masters that are going to be talking to a master of master, so that scalability of the solution is another unique differentiator that we built into the product from day one.
Okay, great. Could you put up the last PowerPoint slide, please, Sri?
Yes,
there's some outstanding questions we didn't get to. We will respond to all of them individually. Thank you for those. Just wanted to wrap up today's webinar by encouraging anybody that wants to improve the applications in their Citrix environment to go to our website and download one of our free products. There's two different versions. We have our absolute free product download, which gives you 5 agents to deploy on your infrastructure, and that is for unlimited time. If you have a larger environment, you can download our full product evaluation, and what that does is gives you unlimited agents for 14 days. So 2 different product downloads. Go to www.appensure.com and you can find the red flag anywhere on our site and start the download process. Again, thank you, everyone. I will end the recording and make sure that each of you receive it once it's available.
Thank you all for your time.